Welcome, family. Please subscribe if you enjoy stories like this. Say hello in the comments and tell us your city or country. With that, let's continue our story. The black vest was too tight, and the bow tie kept choking me, but I needed this job. $75 for 4 hours of serving champagne to people who spent more on shoes than I made in a month. I couldn't afford to be picky. The Riverside Grand Ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and designer gowns. I carried my tray of champagne flutes carefully, keeping my head down, hoping nobody would recognize me. The last thing I needed was someone from my old life seeing me like this. "Champagne, sir?" I offered to a man in a tuxedo that probably cost more than my car. He took a glass without looking at me. I was invisible here, just part of the furniture. That was fine. I preferred it that way. The charity gala was for children's literacy, hosted by tech billionaire Marcus Chen. Everyone who was anyone in the city was here, writing checks with more zeros than I could count. Meanwhile, I was working my third job of the week, trying to keep my non-profit alive on donations that came in $5 and $10 at a time. I'd been serving for about an hour when I saw him. My brother, Daniel. He stood in the center of a circle of admirers, his custom suit perfect, his smile confident. Daniel worked as a senior vice president at Pinnacle Trust Bank, one of the largest financial institutions in the state. He was everything my family had ever wanted in a child: successful, wealthy, respectable. I was everything they hadn't. My stomach dropped. I turned quickly, trying to move to a different section of the ballroom, but fate wasn't kind. "Emma." His voice carried across the marble floor. "Emma Richardson?" I froze. Several heads turned. I had no choice but to face him. "Daniel," I said quietly, my tray balanced carefully. "I didn't know you'd be here." His expression shifted from surprise to something else. Something cruel. "What are you doing here? Working catering?" The people around him glanced at me with mild curiosity. I felt my face burn. "Just helping out," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Excuse me, I have to." "Wait, everyone, this is my sister," Daniel announced, his voice louder now. Several more people turned to look. "Emma, why don't you tell these fine people what you've been up to? Still playing non-profit worker?" Playing. The word hit like a slap. "I run a literacy program," I said softly. "In the Southside neighborhoods." One of the women in Daniel's circle, dripping in diamonds, made a sympathetic sound. "Oh, how sweet. Volunteer work." "It's not volunteer work," I said. "It's my organization. Reading Wings. We teach adults and children." "Reading Wings," Daniel interrupted, laughing. "That's right. Emma here went to an expensive university, got a degree in education, and now she serves drinks at night to fund her hobby of teaching people to read in abandoned community centers." The humiliation burned through me. Several people laughed politely, uncomfortable. "It's not a hobby," I said, my voice shaking now. "Last year we helped 200 adults get their GED certificates. We have 15 volunteer tutors and—" "Emma, please," Daniel said, waving his hand dismissively. "These people don't need a sales pitch. They're here for real philanthropy, not feel-good projects that don't scale." A man in the circle nodded. Daniel's bank just donated $500,000 to the city education fund. Now that's impact. I knew about that donation. Everyone did. Pinnacle Trust Bank had made sure every news outlet covered their generous gift. What the news didn't cover was that the City Education Fund spent 60% of its donations on administrative costs and fancy fundraising events like this one. "That's wonderful," I managed. "If you'll excuse me." "Wait, take our drink orders first," Daniel said. "Since you're working, I'll have a scotch. Top shelf. The ladies will have more champagne." I wasn't supposed to take drink orders. I was just passing champagne. But the way he said it, like he was putting me in my place, made it clear this wasn't about drinks. "Of course," I whispered. As I walked toward the bar, I heard Daniel's voice carry behind me. She could have done something with her life. Our parents paid for Princeton. Instead, she's serving drinks and playing savior in the hood. Playing savior. As if the work wasn't real. As if the woman who cried when she read her first book at 43 wasn't real. As if the teenager who got into college because we helped him pass his entrance exams wasn't real. I reached the bar, my hands shaking so badly I almost dropped the tray. "You okay?" the bartender asked. I nodded, not trusting my voice. I delivered Daniel's drinks. He didn't thank me, just took the scotch and turned back to his conversation. I was dismissed, invisible again. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. I served champagne, cleared plates, avoided eye contact. I counted down the minutes until I could leave. At the end of the night, Marcus Chen, the billionaire host, took the stage. He was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes behind expensive glasses. "Thank you all for coming tonight," he said. "Together, we've raised $2 million for children's literacy programs. Your generosity will change lives." Everyone applauded. I clapped too, holding my empty tray, thinking about how $2 million could transform my program. We could expand to 3 more neighborhoods. Hire full-time teachers. Provide books to every family. But that money wasn't for organizations like mine. It was for the big, established charities with fancy offices and board members who looked like the people in this room. After Chen finished speaking, we were released. I collected my $75 in cash and headed for the exit, desperate to get home, to shower off this night, to pretend it never happened. "Excuse me." I turned. Marcus Chen stood behind me, still in his tuxedo. "Yes, sir?" I said automatically, reverting to my server role. "You're Emma Richardson, correct?" My heart sank. Had Daniel complained about me? Was I going to lose this catering gig too? "Yes," I said carefully. "I overheard your conversation with your brother earlier." His expression was unreadable. "You run a literacy non-profit called Reading Wings?" Oh God. This was it. He was going to lecture me about bothering donors, about being unprofessional. "I do," I said. "But I wasn't soliciting donations during work hours. I would never." "I'd like to learn more about your organization," he interrupted. "Would you have time to meet with me next week?" I stared at him, confused. "I don't understand. Your brother said your program operates in Southside neighborhoods, teaching adults and children to read." "Yes, but..." "That's exactly the kind of grassroots work that interests me," Chen said. "The big charities are fine, but I'm looking for programs that actually connect with communities. Programs that work." I couldn't process what he was saying. "You want to learn about Reading Wings? If you're willing to tell me about it." He pulled out a business card. "My assistant's information is here. Call on Monday to schedule a meeting." I took the card with trembling fingers. "Thank you, Mr. Chen." "Marcus," he corrected. "And thank you for the work you do. It matters more than you know." He walked away, leaving me standing in the empty ballroom foyer, holding a business card that felt like a winning lottery ticket. I didn't tell anyone about the meeting. Not my volunteers, not my friends. Definitely not my family. I'd learned long ago not to get my hopes up where they were concerned. Monday morning, I called the number on the card. Chen's assistant scheduled me for Wednesday at 2 p.m. at Chen's downtown office. I wore my best outfit, a gray pantsuit I'd bought at a thrift store 3 years ago. It was outdated, but it was professional. I practiced my pitch on the drive over, trying to calm my nerves. Chen's office occupied the entire top floor of the Sterling Building, one of the tallest structures in the city. The views were breathtaking, the furniture sleek and modern. I felt completely out of place. His assistant led me to a conference room where Chen sat with a laptop and what looked like a thick file folder. "Emma, thank you for coming," he said, standing to shake my hand. "Please, sit." I sat, clutching my worn leather bag that contained every piece of documentation about reading wings I could fit. I've been doing some research on your organization, Chen said, opening the folder. You're a registered 501(c)(3), founded 5 years ago. You operate out of 3 community centers in the South Side. You have 15 volunteer tutors and serve approximately 200 students per year. I nodded, surprised he knew so much. Your overhead is remarkably low, he continued. Only 12% of your budget goes to administrative costs. The rest funds direct programming. We don't have fancy offices, I said. We meet in community centers that let us use their space for free. Our tutors are volunteers. The money goes to books, learning materials, and stipends for our 2 part-time coordinators. Chen nodded slowly. And you fund this how? Small donations mostly. A few local businesses contribute. I work 3 jobs to cover what donations don't. Catering, tutoring private students, and weekend retail. 3 jobs, he repeated. While running a non-profit. It's not sustainable, I admitted. I know that. But I can't let it die. These programs, they change lives. I've seen it. Tell me about that, Chen said, leaning forward. Tell me about the people you serve. So I did. I told him about Maria, a 52-year-old housekeeper who learned to read so she could help her grandchildren with homework. About James, a construction worker who'd hidden his illiteracy for 30 years until he came to us and finally learned. About the teenagers who needed just a little extra help to pass their tests, to get into college, to break cycles of poverty. I talked for an hour. Chen listened, taking notes, asking questions. Good questions. Questions that showed he understood the work, the challenges, the victories. When I finally stopped, he sat back. Emma, what would you do with significant funding? Real funding, enough to expand? My heart pounded. We could hire full-time teachers instead of relying only on volunteers. Expand to more neighborhoods. Provide childcare during adult classes so parents can attend. Create a scholarship fund for students who want to continue their education. How much? I'm sorry. How much would you need to do all that? I'd dreamed about this question for years, but I'd never expected to actually answer it. $500,000 would transform everything, I said. We could serve 1,000 students instead of 200. Hire 6 full-time staff members. Open satellite locations. Chen nodded. And what's your current annual budget? $47,000, I admitted. Most of it from my own pocket. He closed the folder. I'm prepared to give you $2 million. The room spun. I'm sorry, what? $2 million over 3 years, Chen clarified. $750,000 the first year, then $625,000 for each of the next 2 years. Enough to build something sustainable. I couldn't breathe. Mr. Chen, I don't. Marcus, he corrected again. And before you worry, there are conditions. I'll want quarterly reports on outcomes. I'll want to see data on student progress, retention rates, program expansion. And I'll want you to hire a professional grant writer to apply for additional funding so you're not dependent solely on my money. Of course, I stammered. Absolutely. I can do all of that. There's one more thing, he said, his expression changing slightly. I've also been researching your brother's bank. My stomach dropped. What? Pinnacle Trust Bank. They made a big show of donating $500,000 to the City Education Fund at the gala Saturday night. Yes, I said slowly. I heard about that. Do you know how the City Education Fund spends its money? I knew some of it. Their administrative costs are high. 63% of every dollar goes to overhead, Chen said. Salaries, office space, fundraising events. Meanwhile, your organization puts 88% of every dollar directly into programming. I nodded, unsure where this was going. I've decided to pull my investments from Pinnacle Trust Bank, Chen said calmly. All $50 million of them. The number was so large I couldn't comprehend it. Because of me. Because they fund ineffective charities while humiliating people who are doing real work, Chen corrected. What your brother did at that gala was unacceptable. But beyond that, after I started researching, I discovered Pinnacle Trust's entire charitable giving strategy is designed for PR, not impact. They donate to organizations that look good in press releases, not organizations that change lives. But $50 million, I whispered. That will hurt people at the bank. It will hurt executives like your brother, Chen said. The people who make those decisions. Maybe it will teach them something. I should have felt satisfaction. Some part of me did. But mostly I felt numb. I'm moving my investments to Community First Bank, Chen continued. They're smaller, but their charitable giving actually supports grassroots organizations. I'm also talking to my network about doing the same. Several other major investors are interested. Daniel will lose his job, I said softly. Possibly, Chen acknowledged. But Emma, your brother stood in a room full of influential people and mocked you for doing meaningful work. He called it playing. He reduced 5 years of transforming lives to a hobby. That tells me everything I need to know about his values and his judgment. He slid a contract across the table. This is the funding agreement. Take it home, read it, have a lawyer review it if you want. But Emma, you've built something real. You deserve support, not mockery. I took the contract with shaking hands, unable to speak. The news about Chen pulling his investments broke 2 days later. The business section ran a front-page story. Tech billionaire moves $50 million, cites ineffective charitable strategy. The article mentioned other investors following Chen's lead. By the end of the week, Pinnacle Trust had lost over $200 million in investments. My phone started ringing. First my mother. Emma, what did you do? I was in my tiny apartment, still trying to process everything. What do you mean? Daniel's bank is in crisis. They're talking about layoffs. The CEO is furious. What did you say to Marcus Chen? I didn't say anything, I said honestly. We talked about my non-profit. That's all. Your non-profit, Mom repeated, her voice sharp. Your little project that you work 3 jobs to support. Daniel has a real career, Emma. He has a mortgage, responsibilities. So do I, Mom. This is revenge, isn't it? Because of what happened at the gala. I closed my eyes. Daniel humiliated me in front of dozens of people. Called my life's work a hobby. But no, this isn't revenge. Chen made his own business decision. A decision that's destroying your brother's career. Maybe Daniel should have thought about that before he treated me like trash. The line went silent for a moment. Then, you've always been jealous of him. The words hit like they always did, familiar and painful. I have to go, Mom. I hung up. Daniel called next. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Are you happy now? His voice was tight with rage. Hello, Daniel. Chen pulled his investments because of you. Because I hurt your feelings at the gala. He pulled his investments because Pinnacle Trust funds ineffective charities for PR purposes, I said calmly. Maybe if you actually cared about impact instead of headlines. Impact. You work 3 jobs and serve drinks at parties. Don't lecture me about impact. I'm not serving drinks anymore, I said. Chen funded my non-profit. $2 million. The silence on the other end was deafening. You're lying, Daniel finally said. I'm not. And with that funding, we're going to serve 1,000 students next year instead of 200. We're hiring full-time teachers. Expanding to more neighborhoods. Creating real, lasting change. By destroying my career. I didn't destroy anything, Daniel. You did that yourself when you decided to humiliate your sister in public. You vindictive. I'm not vindictive, I interrupted. I'm just done shrinking myself to make you feel bigger. I hung up. The rest of my family called over the next few days. My aunt, my uncle, even my grandmother. All asking me to apologize to Chen, to fix this, to save Daniel's career. None of them asked about my non-profit. None of them congratulated me on the funding. I was still just the disappointment, the problem, the one who needed to fix things. I stopped answering their calls. 3 weeks later, I stood in the new Reading Wings office. Chen's funding had allowed us to rent actual space, a beautiful storefront in the south side with big windows and room for classrooms, a computer lab, and a small library. Volunteers were painting walls, assembling bookshelves, organizing materials. Maria, the 52-year-old housekeeper who'd learned to read in our program, was there helping. So was James, the construction worker. And a dozen others whose lives had been changed by what my brother called playing. "This is incredible," Maria said, looking around with tears in her eyes. "A real place. A real school. We're going to change so many lives here," I said, my own voice thick with emotion. My phone buzzed. A news alert. Pinnacle Trust Bank announces restructuring, multiple executive departures. I opened the article. Daniel's name was on the list. He was being let go as part of the restructuring, along with several other senior vice presidents. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt sad. Sad for the relationship we never had, the brother who'd chosen cruelty over kindness, the family that valued money over meaning. But I also felt free. For the first time in my life, I wasn't trying to earn their approval. I wasn't making myself smaller. I wasn't apologizing for caring about things that mattered. "Everything okay?" Maria asked, noticing my expression. "Yeah," I said, putting my phone away. "Everything's okay." 6 months later, Reading Wings had grown beyond my wildest dreams. We'd served 600 students, hired 4 full-time teachers, and opened 2 satellite locations. Local news had done a feature on us. Other nonprofits were reaching out to learn from our model. Chen visited regularly, treating me like a professional colleague rather than a charity case. He introduced me to other philanthropists, helped me build a board of directors, taught me how to navigate the world of nonprofit leadership. "You know," he said during one of his visits, "I've been funding charities for 15 years. Your organization has the highest impact per dollar of anything I've ever supported. We just care about the work," I said simply. "Not the optics." He nodded. "That's exactly why it works." I ran into Daniel once, at a coffee shop downtown. He was thinner, his suit less expensive than I remembered. He looked tired. We stared at each other for a long moment. I waited for anger, for accusations, for another fight. Instead, he said quietly, "I got a new job. Smaller bank. Lower salary. But it's fine. I'm glad you landed on your feet," I said. And I meant it. "You've done well," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "I saw the news story about your program. It's impressive." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. "Thank you," I said. We stood there awkwardly, 2 siblings who'd taken completely different paths. "I'm sorry," Daniel said finally, "for what I said at the gala. It was cruel." The apology hung between us, years too late but offered nonetheless. "I appreciate that," I said carefully. He nodded, grabbed his coffee, and left. I watched him go, feeling a strange mixture of emotions I couldn't quite name. I didn't tell him that I'd forgiven him. I wasn't sure I had. But I'd moved past needing his validation, which was its own kind of freedom. My family never did understand what I did. Mom still introduced me as Emma, who works with a reading program, like it was a side project instead of my life's work. My aunt still asked when I was going to get a real job. My cousins still looked uncomfortable when I talked about the communities I served. But I stopped caring. I found my own family in the volunteers who showed up every week, in the students who hugged me when they passed their tests, in the community members who thanked me for seeing them as worthy of investment. The final twist came a year after the gala. Chen called me into his office again. "I have a proposition," he said. I'm starting a foundation focused on education equity. I want you to lead it. I stared at him. What? You'd still run Reading Wings, but you'd also oversee our funding for similar grassroots education programs across the country. You'd have a staff, a real budget, the ability to replicate what you've built here in other cities. Marcus, I'm not qualified to. You're the most qualified person I know, he interrupted. You've built something real from nothing. You understand community needs. You measure impact, not optics. That's exactly what I need. The salary he offered was more than Daniel had made at Pinnacle Trust. The irony wasn't lost on me. I accepted. 2 years after my brother threw his contempt at me in that glittering ballroom, I stood on a stage at a TED Talk. The topic was grassroots philanthropy and why traditional charity models were failing. I told my story. The catering job, the humiliation, the billionaire who saw past the uniform to the work underneath. My brother thought I was playing at charity, I said to the audience. He thought real impact came from big donations to big organizations with big overhead. But I learned that real impact comes from showing up, from seeing people as human beings worthy of investment, from measuring success in changed lives rather than press releases. The talk went viral. Millions of views. Interview requests from major media outlets. Speaking invitations from universities and foundations. And through it all, I remembered that night in the Riverside Grand Ballroom, carrying champagne and absorbing my brother's cruelty, certain that I was small and invisible and worthless. I wasn't any of those things. I never had been. Sometimes the people who should see your worth are the blindest. Sometimes you have to find validation elsewhere. Sometimes the black sheep isn't the failure, they're the one brave enough to succeed on their own terms. My brother humiliated me while I served him drinks at a charity gala. A billionaire witnessed it and changed my life. But the real change wasn't the money or the career or the revenge. It was finally believing I'd been valuable all along. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe. Share your own experiences with being underestimated by family in the comments. You're not alone. And remember, your worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see it. Keep doing the work that matters. Someone will notice. And more importantly, you'll know your own value, regardless of who else does. The moral: true success isn't measured by others' approval but by the positive impact you create. Those who mock meaningful work often value appearances over substance. Sometimes the universe has a way of rewarding authentic effort and exposing shallow priorities. Your family's inability to see your worth doesn't diminish it, it reveals their limitations, not yours.